Biggest game of the season, this, isn't it? Biggest game of the season for Tottenham Hotspur. The biggest game that we've had in ages. It is an absolute must-win against Manchester United in the Carabao Cup quarter-final to try and get closer to ending this 16-year trophy drought. It's a huge game. We've already beaten United once so far this season. We beat them at Old Trafford, but this is a very different Manchester United that are coming into this game off the back of a win in the Manchester derby. Welcome back to the Ben Bowman YouTube channel. I hope you guys are doing very, very well. Thanks for all the support on the Southampton video. If you missed that, go back and watch it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video as well. On the road to 10,000 subscribers, so if you could help me get there, hopefully by the end of the year. Maybe it's a little bit optimistic, if not early in the new year. That'd be massively appreciated. The support on the channel since I started, I've been blown away by it and consistently am, to be honest. But we're going to do a breakdown of the United game as we always do on Friday morning. Hopefully we're talking about a Tottenham victory and Tottenham on their way to Wembley into the semi-finals. But this is going to be a tricky one for Spurs, because this is kind of the kind of games that Ange almost likes the least, and I think we struggle in quite a lot against a team that is going to sit in deep and be compact. So how do you break that down? Manchester United, since Ruben Amorim has come in, obviously they've had some good results. None more better than obviously the result of the weekend against Man City, where they defended so well. They restricted Manchester City to 0 big chances in the game, under 1 expected goal. And I think it was the least amount of touches Man City have had in an opposition box so far this season, which is crazy. United very, very compact defensively. And I know City are struggling, but United were very hard to break down. And a lot of that comes down to the structure in which they are set up. And this is why I think we have to go back to the 2 number 10s for this game, in my opinion. Obviously, we saw a midfield 3 of Maddison, Berval and Sarr on Sunday against Southampton. I think that worked really well. And I definitely think there's something in that for the future. But for now, I think to maximise the physicality and creativity to unlock this Manchester United team. And look, the Man United team I put out here is the starting 11. Well, it wasn't quite the starting 11 that they had on Sunday because Mason Mount started, got injured. He won't be available for the game. This is the team they basically had after the first 10 minutes. So there will be some personnel changes in here. You could see Lenny Yoro coming in for one of these 3 in the back line. I wouldn't be surprised if Joshua Zirkzee starts up front, with United maybe wanting to be a bit more compact and hit on the counter-attack, his ability to drop deep and spray passes. I would not be surprised to see Rashford or Garnacho back in. Actually, it was Mainoo that started instead of Casemiro, wasn't it? Kobbie Mainoo. Actually, I think, no, Bruno started in there, and I think Mainoo came off the bench. I think that's right. But anyway, it could be Mainoo in there. It could be Casemiro in there, like I said. Rashford or Garnacho could come back in. But I won't worry too much about the personnel kind of things from Manchester United. It's more about their structure and how they set up and what Spurs do to try and be able to break that down. Because City got their most amount of joy in that first half when they were kind of playing between the lines, playing quickly. Manchester United will sit back in kind of this 5-2-3 shape or a 5-3-2 shape. They'll often press in kind of more of a 5-3-2 with Højlund and Ahmad or whoever is playing as one of those 2 number 10s, getting right up there to press. And they have scored goals through turning the ball over, and will come through some of the goals they've scored and some of the goals they've conceded under Amorim. But they will sit back in this kind of compact block. And one of the ways that City had joy kind of playing through the lines was getting that extra man in midfield. If we kind of go back to this Tottenham lineup in terms of how I think we might go, this is why I think it's the perfect kind of game for Kulusevski in that number 10 position alongside James Maddison to try and unpick that lock. But I think the way that we play with the fullbacks kind of coming inside, Jed Spence, and I think it will be Jed Spence on the left and Pedro Porro on the right. It sounds like Doggy's not injured, which is good, but I think Ange might not take a chance with the turnaround in games that we've got. But you see Man City here kind of getting that extra man in midfield with sort of Gvardiol coming in there and allowing that to free up the room for Kevin De Bruyne. And now, Man United have been a lot better disciplined, I think, under Amorim, and that has definitely become the case since the games have gone on. Obviously, they've conceded goals, they've been up and down in terms of their form, but they are disciplined in that defensive line. And one thing that you can really see is that it massively shifts over. Say if City are kind of playing down this right-hand channel, I've kind of got the example here on the board here. You can see Man United kind of really shift over. And I think there is definitely room to get behind these kind of 2 pivot players by using Decky and using Maddison centrally. You can see here, this move kind of starts with Walker playing the ball into Gundogan, who becomes that sort of spare man. That could be Pedro Porro, that could be Jed Spence moving over from the left-back position, that could be Yves Bissouma pushing up that little bit more here. Dragusin could find him into feet there, and Pedro Porro sort of becomes your spare man here, as Kevin De Bruyne has become. And look at Phil Foden's movement. He's able to peel off of Agate and Mainoo, who are playing of those two pivot players. Kulusevski had a lot of joy against Manuel Agate. Manuel Agate is someone that I think his performances have been getting better and better. He's obviously playing under a manager that has used him before, obviously at Sporting. But I think Decky had a lot of joy against Agate at Old Trafford. We'll kind of run through some of Decky's best bits from this game so it gets fresh in your memory, and you'll see Agate kind of getting done multiple times. Decky coming inside allows you to obviously have two main creators trying to unpick more of a low block. United were a mess this day. They were 100%. But again, you see Decky there peeling off one of the pivot players in Mainoo, driving inside. Again, kind of getting into these more central areas, getting away from Agate there. These are the kind of areas that you want him in to receive the ball. Again, different system, obviously, but personnel-wise, I think Kulusevski in midfield really suits this kind of game. Able to get behind their back four or back three or back four it was this day again and coming centrally. It's more about his ability to win the ball back as well in these kind of areas and set Spurs away. Dropping deeper, that deep progression. Again, he's able to get away from Agate. Agate couldn't live with him. That deeper run then comes from Porro. Again, here he's able to create that separation from the midfielders, nipping there ahead of Agate and getting booked. Here again, gets away from Dalot. Gets him in the book as well. His strength to hold off of the midfielders. And Martinez is someone that is going to jump. He is going to jump. And you kind of see that here when we go back. Martinez is the one that jumps and kind of creates that space for Foden to get into as well as getting beyond those kind of two pivot players. Martinez often jumps and will leave that space in behind him. And here, look, Casemiro tries one at him. Tries to tackle at him. Agate tries to tackle at him. He's got that strength to hold these kind of players off. Are Spurs going to be able to make this game as transitional as that one was at Old Trafford? Probably not. United was so open that day. But I think putting Kulusevski in midfield to be able to combine, create, get away from United's midfielders, I think is going to be the key to unlocking the door. As you see here, Foden, like I said, is able to drift off because Martinez is pushed up. He gets in behind those two pivot players. Lovely little dummy into Haaland. Little 1-2, and he's able to run into the box directly at Maguire. And look, Harry Maguire had an excellent game. An excellent game at the Etihad on Sunday. United defended really well as a unit. Their box defending was really, really good. But I think Spurs can take a lot from Man City in that game because I don't think City's tactical approach was wrong. I think it was more down to the individual quality necessarily that they didn't show. And I think we're just coming off the back of a 5-0 battering against Southampton. Obviously, Kulusevski played on the right in that game, but I think trying to get him into these central pockets as much as possible, I think is how you're going to get maximum benefit out of him. Like I said here, if you're Dragusin, you're able to get the ball into Basoumas, play it out to Porro, he can sort of peel off. Martinez then pushes up, which sort of creates that space for maybe Solanke to drive into and force United back. Get the ball into Kulusevski there. Kulusevski loves these kind of positions, can combine with Solanke, maybe can get beyond him. You can then bring Johnson into play. And one thing we've seen with United as well is obviously a lot of rotation in the games. A lot of rotation in the games that Amorim has managed. And we'll go through some of the goals conceded now because you'll see a lot of different players that he's used, right? He's basically used everyone in that squad. First goal they conceded under Amorim was obviously this shot from Hutchinson from outside the box. But here, this was his first home game against Bodo Glimt, I think it was, in the Europa League. De Ligt was in the back line that day. Malacia played at left back. And I do wonder whether Malacia will play instead of Dalot tomorrow. Again, don't pay too much attention to the personnel on this tactics board from a United perspective. I've got some of their options that they could use on the bench here. I wouldn't be surprised if they brought the likes of Casemiro in. I do think he'll rotate a bit. Maybe Euro coming in. I think Garnacho and Rashford will definitely be back in the squad. And I think Xerxes might play instead of Højlund. And I think Malacia, although I haven't got him there, could play at left back instead of Dalot. But United has still shown a bit of a vulnerability in terms of quite often, if teams can win the ball in these kind of areas, there still is quite a big gap, space between their midfield and their back line. And if you can turn them over and get the likes of Agate and Casemiro running back towards their own goal, you can cause them problems, which is exactly what Bodo Glimt did. And again, one ball in behind here. You can imagine Johnson in this kind of scenario versus Malacia. And again, you've got the United players running back towards their own goal. Obviously, go through the Arsenal game, 2 set pieces. United have had a bit of a problem with set pieces, as we see in the Forest game as well, but Arsenal are obviously very good at them. Again, Forest, they struggled there. But despite the fact that I think United look a lot more kind of settled in their in their structure under Amorim, and I do think week on week it's starting to get better. There are still a lot of individual mistakes in there because these players, that they're still trying to find that confidence, right? The biggest victory that they've had, other than the Manchester derby, scoreline-wise, was the Everton game. And I thought they played really well against Everton. I really enjoyed that performance. I really enjoyed the performances of Xerxes and Rashford in that game. But Everton were really poor on the day, and we'll come and talk about that in a sec. But again here, you're still seeing these individual errors. Fernandes giving the ball away, and then you turn it over, and you've got them running towards their own goal. And again, with the high press that Spurs like to put on, obviously, I think that second half against Southampton is going to be massive for Tottenham in terms of being able to conserve that energy. And I think Spurs, if they can be rampant from minute one in terms of their pressing, because Spurs forced a lot of errors. The amount of turnovers that we forced in that first half at Old Trafford, and again, obviously, different United team. United are in a better place now. They were an absolute mess on the day, of course, absolutely. But a lot of the United players that played that day will be playing tomorrow. And as a footballer, that kind of doubt and that worry and that fear in your mind doesn't go away necessarily, right? It doesn't necessarily go away. So they will be fully aware of what Spurs want to do. And we feel like there is a lack of... there's a bit of a lack of belief and lack of technical security in maybe that United midfield and back line, which we'll also come on to when you look at some of the other goals that they conceded. But here, individual mistakes, giving the ball away, crosses into the box. Again, they've got good box defenders, United, and often those wing-backs will kind of tuck in, as you can see here. Certainly, well, if you make the game a bit more lopsided, if you play through one of the channels, they do become quite lopsided. They'll tuck in very narrow. That creates the space. It's safer attacking down the right. That will create the space for Sonny to maybe isolate Mazraoui 1v1 if you're able to move the ball quickly into these kind of areas. It's going to be hard to attack the box so much because if Maguire plays De Ligt, they've got very good box defenders, but there still can be mistakes in there. And you saw here a real lack of communication from the goalkeeper and the defender. And again here, lack of communication between the goalkeeper and defender trying to play out from the back. And again with Spurs' high pressing, that'll be fresh in the mind of United, and they have to be super, super on it. Again, they'll kind of almost try and build up sometimes in more of a 4-2-2. One of the midfielders will kind of come in as a centre-back, or you sort of see De Ligt here offering the sort of pass maybe you'd see from a fullback. If you're looking at Spurs, when we build out, we often split our centre-backs with Dragusin and Gray. It's the 6 that comes in for this sort of bounce pass, and then it'll either be one of the 10s or 8s in this kind of position, or the fullback in this kind of position in Jed Spence. Obviously, we know that Maddison loves to kind of get into these left-back areas to help us build out. It's something we talked about a lot on the channel. But you see here, I think that's very risky from Man United. De Ligt almost in the midfielder's kind of position with the way that they sort of split a lot of the time. And it hasn't, they got caught out here. It was undersold by Onana in terms of the pass, definitely. But still, that lack of communication, the lack of confidence is there. And Spurs will have the bit between their teeth after the performance that we put in against Southampton on Sunday. And obviously, it's fresh in the mind what we did to Manchester United at Old Trafford. Again, so like I said, obviously, pinch of salt, Amorim, new era, all that kind of stuff, etc. Obviously. But it's still fresh in both sets of players' minds. Spurs will be able to feel like... it's the same as kind of Man City in a way, right? Man City have been a consistently better side than us, but we've consistently got the better of them over a long period of time. So those mental kind of images of how you can see goals or how the other team can hurt you, they won't go away. And Spurs were super on it this day. United not confident, but Spurs massively made the most of that, winning the ball back time after time in that first half in good areas. Solanke a massive part of it. Maddison a massive part of it. Kulusevski a massive part of it. But I do think there's been a lot of good stuff as well. From Amorim so far at United. This is, if we kind of go through some of the goals they've scored, transitional moments, Diallo playing as a right wing back in this game into Rashford. I think he's definitely nailed down that right-hand sided number 10 spot, if we're being honest. Amadi was excellent on Sunday. High pressing, kind of pressing in that front two, like I said. Obviously, Mount here was kind of playing in that front three that day, but you don't see him as much in the picture. It's obviously Højlund and Garnacho pressing, working hard as that front two. A little bit of quality in the box here from Højlund. And again, lovely football here, little flick around the corner from Mason Mount. And quite often you'll see one of those right-hand side or one of the centre midfielders kind of push on beyond the number 10 and get into these sort of crossing positions with those wing-backs stand a little bit more wide. Again, I talked about the pressing. This was a really good performance from United against Everton. Forced to goal there for Xerxes. Xerxes here, this is what I mean. Spurs pushing on to United a little bit. I do think this is one way they think they might hurt us. And I think Xerxes could play in this game. A bit more of a back to goal kind of striker who can bring the other players into play, and United can kind of play on the counter-attack a little bit. Ahmad finding Rashford, typical Rashford goal there. Ahmad again pinching it on the turnover. This kind of more of the like up, back and through kind of phase of play from United here. Centre-back into Fernandes, who was playing as one of those 2 number 10s. This day dropping that little bit deeper to combine and allowing that space in the central area for Ugarte to drive forward. Garnacho in behind and Højlund scores again here. I do worry maybe a little bit about this with how many bodies Spurs will commit forward, and obviously the intensity that we put in and the intensity running back and forward. United being able to kind of spray these passes out. Ahmad very direct, finds Fernandes, back to him, goal. Again, you think about Ahmad and the individual quality there, that little nutmeg shot blocks, comes out to Højlund. A little bit of inventive quality here. Højlund back to goal striker. I don't think he'll be able to bully someone like Dragusin physically as much if he does play, but he gets the turn and shot here. Obviously, if you're going back to the sort of goals they conceded, you think back to the derby at the weekend, they have had a problem with balls into the box. This was a bit of an unfortunate one because it kind of really deflects up onto the head of Guardiola. It's a bit of a strange cross. Ahmad sort of puts in the attempt to cross it. Højlund doesn't really do enough to stop the header from Guardiola. But we're all aware of this piece of brilliance from Ahmad to win the game for United, and he is really absolutely the one to watch out for. Again, I think if you're talking about Spurs building up from the back, like I said, United will kind of press in that front too. But again, I think if you can kind of be able to... We know what Spurs like to do here, right? We know Spurs' main outlet of progressing the ball from deep is goalkeeper into the 6, out to the right-sided centre-back, out to the full-back, down the line to the right winger, back into the sort of number 10, and then Johnson can go. And I think Malacia or Kulusevski can sort of drive and drag players with him and beat players, and then you can kind of get the ball into these areas, and then you can get everybody up the pitch. But again, United don't really... The high line, we don't really play that much of a high line. It'd be interesting to see how many players they do commit forward in that press. It's very structured, very well organised so far, not allowing a lot of space in behind them, good box defending. But I think Spurs... I think it's been a really good test for this United side. I do, because I think that Spurs have got the personnel and the confidence to hurt them after what we've done already so far this season, albeit under a different manager and a squad that's in a different place. But I do think the scars will still be there. But I think in terms of trying to break Man United down, I think going back to those 2 number 10s with how well Kulusevski played centrally, how well he was able to bully the likes of Ugarte, Casemiro, Kobbie Mainoo as well in those central areas at Old Trafford, I think that's the way to go. These are tough games for Ange. Trying to break down low blocks has been a problem with Tottenham for a long time. It's a problem with everyone, to be honest. Like Arsenal couldn't beat Everton at the weekend. It does happen. You can have those kind of games. But I think to give yourself the best kind of chance, I think Kulusevski playing centrally in this game is the one, with Basuma coming in there, back in there for that bit more physicality and robustness defensively, rather than going with Bergvall and Sarr potentially. So you could play Sarr in that 6, but I think it will be Basuma, and I would like to see that line up tomorrow. But you guys let me know what you think in the comments. It's a massive game for Tottenham, don't get me wrong. Absolutely massive, massive game. We want to be back at Wembley, right? We want to be back in a final. And look, there'd be one more step to go, obviously, if we got past Man United, but just that confidence, that feel-good factor. Hopefully it's starting to come back after Southampton. Big run of games. United tomorrow, Liverpool Sunday. There'll be a review, a breakdown of United on the Friday, and a preview for Liverpool on Saturday. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully this all makes sense to you. Let me know in the comments what you think, what your starting lineup would be, and your prediction as well, of course. And there's only one thing left to say. Up Spurs. Spurs are on their way to Wembley, hopefully. Nice one. Thanks for watching. Bye.